I stared at the golden turkey I had spent 5 hours roasting, sitting untouched in the center of our dining table. My father's words still rang in my ears like a death sentence. You're a burden. Get out. 28 years old, and I was being thrown away like garbage on Christmas night. My stepmother Diane smiled from across the table, her victory complete. Tyler and Amber, her children, looked at me with cold indifference. Nobody knew that for 3 years, I had been paying over $3,000 every single month to keep this house running. Tomorrow, I would pack my things, and I would cut off every single bill. What happened next shocked even me. The silence in the dining room felt heavier than the winter snow piling up outside. I sat frozen, my fork halfway to my mouth, staring at the green bean casserole I had also prepared from scratch. My father Patrick refused to meet my eyes. He was 55 years old, gray hair thinning at the temples, and in that moment, he looked like a complete stranger to me. Diane cleared her throat deliberately, placing her manicured hand over Patrick's. She was 48, blonde hair always perfectly styled, dressed in an expensive cashmere sweater I knew cost at least $300 because I had seen the receipt on the kitchen counter last week. She leaned toward my father and said in that sickeningly sweet voice she used when she wanted something, "Patrick, honey, I think Loretta understands now. Sometimes tough love is necessary." Tough love. The words felt like acid on an open wound. I looked at Tyler, 23 years old, sitting there in his designer hoodie, scrolling through his phone like this was just another boring family dinner. He did not work. He had dropped out of community college 2 years ago and spent his days playing video games in the basement. Amber, 19, was painting her nails at the table, clearly bored. She was supposed to be at the state university, but I knew the truth. I was the one paying her tuition every month, $400 that I could barely afford. My father finally spoke, his voice gruff. "Loretta, you heard me. I want you out by tomorrow. You need to learn responsibility. You're almost 30 and still living at home." Still living at home. The irony burned through my chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the truth in his face, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the look of smug satisfaction on Diane's face. Maybe it was the way Tyler smirked without even looking up from his phone. Or maybe it was the fact that my father, the man who raised me, who held me when my mother died 10 years ago, truly believed I was worthless. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll be gone tomorrow." Diane's smile widened. "That's for the best, dear. You'll thank us someday." I turned and walked up the stairs to my bedroom, the room where I had grown up, where my mother had tucked me in every night before cancer took her from us. I closed the door and locked it, then collapsed onto my bed. The tears came fast and hard, soaking into my pillow. After 10 minutes of crying, I sat up and wiped my face. I looked around my room at the pale blue walls, the bookshelf filled with novels from high school, the framed photos of my mother and me at the beach when I was 7 years old. Everything in this house held memories, but those memories were being ripped away from me. I walked to my desk and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was a small plastic box where I kept all my important documents. I opened it and pulled out a thick folder. Bank statements, receipts, payment confirmations, 3 years' worth of evidence. My hands shook as I spread the papers across my desk. I had kept meticulous records, partly because I worked as an accountant at a small firm downtown, and partly because something in my gut told me I would need proof someday. The mortgage payment for this house, $1,800 per month. I had been paying it. Electricity and gas, $350 per month on average. I paid it. Water and sewer, $90 per month. I paid it. Internet and cable television, $200 per month. I paid it. Home insurance, $180 per month. I paid it. Car insurance for my father's truck, $220 per month. I paid it. Amber's college tuition, $400 per month. I paid it. Miscellaneous household expenses like groceries and toiletries, at least $250 per month. I paid it. The total came to $3,490 every single month for 3 years. That was $125,640 total. Money I had earned working 2 jobs. My main job as an accountant paid decently, but not enough to cover all these bills and still live. So, for the past 3 years, I had also been working at a restaurant every Friday and Saturday night, serving tables until midnight, coming home exhausted and smelling like fried food. I lived like a pauper. I owned 3 pairs of jeans, maybe 10 shirts total. I had not bought new shoes in 2 years. I never went out with friends because I could not afford it. My entire life had been reduced to work, pay bills, sleep, repeat. Meanwhile, Diane went shopping every weekend, coming home with bags from Nordstrom and Macy's. Tyler drove a brand new Honda Civic that he somehow afforded without a job. Amber went on spring break trips to Florida and posted photos on Instagram of herself on the beach with cocktails. And my father, who worked as a manager at a hardware store making a decent salary, apparently contributed nothing to the household expenses. But here was the truly shocking part, the piece of information that made my stomach turn. I flipped through the bank statements again, studying the payment methods. For the past 3 years, I had been writing checks or setting up automatic transfers from my personal checking account. Those payments went into the joint household account that my father and Diane shared. But whenever I asked Diane about helping with bills, she would give me specific amounts and tell me to write the check to her name or deposit it directly. I had been so naive, so trusting. I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. Then I pulled up the joint household account that I had limited access to view only. My father had given me that access 2 years ago when I asked to see where the money was going. I scrolled through 3 years of transactions, my heart pounding. There, I found it. Deposits from my account going into the household account. But then I noticed something odd. There were other deposits too, labeled as transfers from an account I did not recognize. I clicked on the details. The account belonged to Diane Watson, her maiden name. I cross-referenced the dates. Every time I made a payment, within a day or two, there would be a matching transfer from Diane's personal account into the household account. Then the household account would pay the bills. Why would Diane be duplicating my payments? Unless. My blood ran cold. I searched through my old text messages with Diane. 3 years ago, right after I had gotten my promotion at the accounting firm, Diane had sent me a message. "Loretta, your father and I are struggling with bills. We need your help. If you don't contribute, I'm afraid Patrick will have to ask you to leave. He already thinks you're taking advantage of living here rent-free." I had been terrified. I had just lost my mother. My father was all I had left. The thought of him kicking me out, of losing him too, was unbearable. So I agreed. I started paying every bill Diane sent my way. But now I understood. Diane had been depositing my checks into her personal account first. Then she would transfer the money into the household account and take credit for paying the bills herself. My father thought his wife was this amazing, generous woman who worked part-time at a boutique and still managed to cover all the household expenses. He had no idea that the money was actually coming from his daughter. Why would Diane do this? To make herself look good, to make me look useless, to slowly turn my father against me. And it had worked. I opened another folder on my laptop, one labeled Family Photos. Inside were old pictures from before my father remarried. Photos of Dad and me at my high school graduation. Photos of us visiting my mother's grave together. Photos of him teaching me how to drive. In every single one, he was smiling. He looked proud of me. When did that change? When did I become a burden in his eyes? The answer was simple. When Diane entered our lives. I closed the laptop and took a deep breath. Then I made a decision. If my father wanted me gone, fine. But I was not going to keep funding the lifestyle of the people who just kicked me out on Christmas. I opened my laptop again and logged into every single account where I had automatic payments set up. First, the mortgage company website. I navigated to the payment settings and canceled the automatic monthly transfer. A confirmation message popped up. Your automatic payment has been canceled. Next payment due January 15th. Next, the electric company. Canceled. Water utility. Canceled. Internet provider. Canceled. Insurance company. Canceled. I went through every single bill, one by one, methodically ending each automatic payment. With each click, I felt a strange mixture of guilt and liberation. Was I doing the right thing? These were the people who had just told me I was a burden. These were the people who had used me for 3 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel, my best friend. "How was Christmas dinner?" I typed back quickly. "Terrible. Dad kicked me out. Can I stay with you for a while?" Her response came within seconds. "Oh my God, yes. Come over right now if you want. I'm so sorry, Loretta." I replied, "Tomorrow morning. I need to pack. Thank you." I looked around my room one more time. Tomorrow, I would leave this house. I would leave behind my childhood, my memories, everything familiar. But maybe that was exactly what I needed. Maybe it was time to stop living for other people and start living for myself. I pulled out my suitcases from the closet and began packing my clothes. As I folded each item, I thought about the future. Where would I be in 6 months? A year? Would my father regret this? Would he realize what he had done? Or would Diane's lies continue to poison him against me? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Starting tomorrow, Patrick and Diane would have to face the consequences of their choices. And I would finally be free. The next morning, December 26th, I woke up at dawn. My bedroom felt different, smaller somehow, knowing I was leaving it forever. I finished packing the last of my belongings into 3 large suitcases and 4 cardboard boxes. My entire life fit into 7 containers. That realization stung more than I expected. I carried everything downstairs in 3 trips. The house was quiet. It was only 6:30 in the morning, and apparently, nobody cared enough to wake up and say goodbye. Fine. I preferred it that way. I loaded my car, a 10-year-old Toyota Camry with a dent in the passenger door, and took one last look at the 2-story colonial house where I had grown up. The white paint was peeling near the gutters. The front garden that my mother had once lovingly tended was now overgrown with weeds. The house looked tired, neglected, just like I felt. I drove to Rachel's apartment across town. She lived in a modest complex near the community college where she worked as an administrative assistant. When I knocked on her door, she answered immediately, still in her pajamas, her curly brown hair pulled into a messy bun. "Get in here," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. I made coffee. Rachel's apartment was small but cozy. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a combined living room and kitchen area. She had already cleared space in her bedroom closet for my clothes and set up an air mattress in the corner for me to sleep on. "I can pay you rent," I said immediately. "I know this is an inconvenience." Rachel waved her hand dismissively. "You're my best friend. You're not an inconvenience. Stay as long as you need." We spent that first day unpacking my things and talking. I told her everything, the bills I had been paying, the way Diane had manipulated the situation, the look on my father's face when he called me a burden. Rachel listened, her expression growing angrier with each detail. "Loretta, that's financial abuse. You know that, right? They used you." "I know," I whispered. "I just don't understand why my dad didn't see it." "Because Diane is a master manipulator," Rachel said firmly. "And your dad was lonely after your mom died. Diane took advantage of that." I nodded, wiping away tears. Rachel was right. I knew she was right, but knowing it did not make the pain any less sharp. The days after Christmas passed in a strange blur. I returned to work on Monday, grateful for the distraction. My coworkers asked how my holiday was, and I gave vague, polite answers. Fine. Quiet. Nothing special. Nobody needed to know the truth. But on the 5th day after Christmas, December 31st, New Year's Eve, everything started to unravel for my father and Diane. I was at Rachel's apartment, helping her prepare snacks for a small New Year's party she was hosting, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Loretta." It was Diane's voice, shrill and panicked. "What did you do?" I put the phone on speaker so Rachel could hear. "What are you talking about?" "The electricity. It's off. The whole house is dark. And the electric company says the automatic payment was canceled and the bill is overdue." I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. "That's strange. Maybe you should pay it." "Pay it? Loretta, this is your responsibility. You always pay the electric bill." "Actually, Diane, I don't live there anymore. Remember? Dad kicked me out. So no, it's not my responsibility." There was a long pause. Then Diane's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You did this on purpose. You canceled the payments." "I canceled my payments," I corrected. "You and Dad are adults. You can handle your own bills. You spiteful little." Diane's voice cut off as I heard my father in the background. "Give me the phone, Diane." My father's voice came through, gruff and confused. "Loretta, what's going on? The electricity is out. Then you should call the electric company and pay the bill, Dad. But I thought Diane was paying it. Diane, didn't you pay the electric bill? I could hear them arguing in the background. Diane's voice rising. No, I thought you were paying it. You handle the bills, Patrick. What? No, you told me you handle all the utilities. You said you had it covered. My heart pounded as I listened to them yell at each other. This was the moment when the truth started to surface. I don't understand, my father said, his voice returning to the phone. Loretta, did you? Were you paying the electric bill? I paused, choosing my words carefully. Dad, I was paying all the bills. For 3 years. Every single one. Mortgage, electricity, water, internet, insurance, everything. Over $3,000 a month, Diane knew. She never told you. Silence. Complete, absolute silence on the other end of the line. Then my father's voice, barely above a whisper. What? Check your bank statements, Dad. Look at where the money was coming from. Then ask Diane why she never mentioned it. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking. Rachel stared at me, her eyes wide. Did that just happen? She asked. Yeah, I breathed. It just happened. Over the next 2 days, I received 17 phone calls from my father and Diane. I ignored all of them. I also received a flood of text messages. From Tyler, you selfish witch, turn the bills back on. From Amber, I can't believe you're doing this to us. You're horrible. From Diane, you're going to regret this, Loretta. Mark my words. From my father, Loretta, please call me back. We need to talk about this. I blocked Tyler and Amber immediately. I left Diane and my father unblocked but muted, so I could see their messages but would not be disturbed by constant notifications. On January 2nd, Rachel came home from work and told me she had seen my father's truck parked outside her apartment building. He's been sitting out there for 20 minutes, she said. Do you want me to tell him to leave? I looked out the window and saw the familiar blue pickup truck. My father sat in the driver's seat, staring at the building. He looked older somehow, tired. No, I said quietly. Let him sit there. If he wants to talk to me, he can call. But I'm not ready yet. Eventually, he drove away. The next blow came on January 4th. The water was shut off at their house. Diane called again, screaming into the phone. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was venomous. You're destroying this family, Loretta. Your father is devastated. How can you be so cruel? Cruel. That word echoed in my mind all day. Was I being cruel? Or was I finally standing up for myself? On January 6th, the internet and cable were disconnected. Tyler sent me a message filled with profanity that I will not repeat here. Apparently, his online gaming life had been destroyed, and he blamed me entirely. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt terrible. But instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in 3 years, I was not drowning in bills. I had money left over after paying Rachel a fair share of her rent and utilities. I could afford to buy myself a new pair of shoes. I went out to dinner with Rachel and paid for both of us without worrying about my bank account. I felt lighter, freer. But the peace would not last long, because Diane was not the type of person to accept defeat quietly. And what she did next proved just how dangerous she could be. By mid-January, my father and Diane had been forced to confront a brutal reality. The mortgage payment for December had not been made. The bank sent them a notice. Payment overdue. Late fees applied. If January's payment was not received by the 15th, they would begin foreclosure proceedings. I knew this because Martha, my mother's younger sister, called me. Martha was 68 years old, a retired librarian who lived 2 hours away in a small town upstate. She and I had lost touch after my father remarried because Diane had slowly cut off all connections between my father and my mother's family. But Martha had recently gotten back in touch with me through Facebook, and we had been exchanging messages. Loretta, honey, I just got off the phone with your father, Martha said, her voice filled with concern. He's in a panic. He says the house might go into foreclosure. Is everything all right? I explained the situation to her. Everything. The bills I had paid. The way Diane manipulated it. How my father kicked me out. Martha listened in silence. And when I finished, she said something that chilled me. Loretta, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you years ago. What is it? It's about your mother's estate. her life insurance and savings. We need to meet in person. Can you come visit me this weekend? I agreed, my mind spinning with questions. But before I could focus on that, my father made his move. On January 10th, a Wednesday evening, I was in Rachel's apartment making dinner when someone pounded on the door. Not knocked. Pounded. Hard enough to rattle the frame. Rachel and I exchanged worried glances. She looked through the peephole and turned pale. "It's your father," she whispered. "And Diane. And Tyler." My stomach dropped. "Don't open it." But the pounding continued. Then Diane's voice, loud and shrill. "Loretta, we know you're in there. Come out and face us." Rachel pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police if they don't leave." The pounding stopped. Then my father's voice, not angry but pleading. "Loretta, please, just talk to me. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking." Against my better judgment, I walked to the door. Rachel grabbed my arm. "Don't," she hissed. But I needed to face this. I opened the door, leaving the chain lock attached, so it only opened a few inches. My father stood there, looking haggard. He had lost weight. Dark circles hung under his eyes. Behind him, Diane stood with her arms crossed, her face twisted in rage. Tyler loomed behind her, trying to look intimidating. "Dad," I said quietly. "Loretta, we need to talk about the bills. You can't just cut us off like this. That's my house, my responsibility." "Then be responsible for it," I said. "I don't live there anymore. You made that very clear on Christmas." Diane pushed forward. "You're being vindictive. You're punishing us because your feelings got hurt. Grow up." My feelings got hurt? I felt anger rising in my chest. "You told my father I was a burden. You convinced him to kick me out. And all while I was paying $3,000 a month to keep your lives comfortable." "That's a lie!" Diane shrieked. "I was the one paying those bills. I worked hard for that money." "Really?" I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "Want me to show Dad the transaction history? Every single payment coming from MY account for 3 years?" My father's face went pale. "Diane, is this true?" Diane's expression flickered. Fear. Just for a second. Then she recovered, putting on a wounded expression. "Patrick, honey, she's manipulating you. She's trying to turn us against each other." "Show me," my father said to me. "Show me the bank statements." I held up my phone, showing him 3 years of transactions, mortgage payments, utility payments, all from my account. My father stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "I don't." "Diane, you told me you were covering these expenses from your work income." "She lied," I said flatly. "She took my money and pretended it was hers. She wanted to look like the perfect wife while making me look useless. And it worked, didn't it, Dad? You believed her." Tyler stepped forward, his face red with anger. "You know what? You're just a spoiled brat who can't handle not being the center of attention anymore. Dad remarried. Get over it." Rachel appeared beside me. "That's enough. You need to leave. Now." "Or what?" Tyler sneered. "Or I call the police," Rachel said calmly, holding up her phone with 911 already dialed, her finger hovering over the call button. Patrick held up his hands. Okay, we're leaving. But Loretta, we will talk about this. Soon." They left, but not before Diane turned and hissed at me. "You'll regret this, you ungrateful little wretch." Rachel closed and locked the door. We stood in silence for a moment, both of us shaking. "That was intense," Rachel finally said. "Yeah." I slid down the door to sit on the floor. "Yeah, it was." But that confrontation was only the beginning. Because Diane was not done. Not by a long shot. 2 days later, I woke up to 17 notifications on Facebook. Confused, I opened the app and felt my blood turn to ice. Diane had posted a long, detailed status on her public profile. The post had been shared over 50 times already. The post read, "My stepdaughter has abandoned our family in our time of need. After years of us providing her a home, food, and love, she has cut off all our utilities out of pure spite. She refuses to help her own father, a hard-working man who gave her everything. My children and I are suffering because of her cruelty. Please keep us in your prayers during this difficult time." Below the text was a photo. A picture of my father looking exhausted, sitting in their darkened living room with a flashlight. It was clearly staged, but it looked heartbreaking. The comments were brutal. What a terrible daughter. How can someone be so heartless to their own father? She should be ashamed of herself. I felt sick. I scrolled through comment after comment, each one attacking me. Someone had even tagged me in the post. My coworkers would see this. My boss. Everyone. I tried to comment to defend myself, but Diane had blocked me from commenting on her posts. I tried to make my own post explaining the situation, but it felt useless. Who would believe me? Diane's post was emotional, sympathetic, perfectly crafted to make her the victim. I deactivated my Facebook account. It was the only way to stop seeing the notifications. But the damage was done. Over the next week, I received messages from distant relatives, family, friends, people I had not spoken to in years, all of them telling me I was wrong, that I should help my father, that I was being cruel and selfish. Even at work, I noticed people whispering when I walked by. My coworker Jennifer, who I had always been friendly with, stopped talking to me altogether. I felt isolated, alone, like the whole world had turned against me. One night, I sat in Rachel's apartment, staring at my phone, at all the hateful messages. I started typing a message to Diane. "I'll pay the bills again, just leave me alone." But before I could send it, Rachel grabbed the phone out of my hands. "Don't you dare," she said fiercely. "Don't let them manipulate you. They're gaslighting you, Loretta, making you think you're the bad guy when you're the victim." "But everyone thinks I'm horrible," I whispered. "Because they don't know the truth. And you know what? You don't owe anyone an explanation. The people who matter, the people who really know you, they'll believe you." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But doubt gnawed at me. Was I wrong? Was I being cruel? Maybe I should just give in. Make this all stop. But then I remembered Christmas dinner, my father's face when he called me a burden, the satisfaction in Diane's smile. And I knew I could not go back. Not now, not ever. The following Saturday, January 20th, I drove 2 hours upstate to visit Martha. She lived in a charming little house with a garden full of winter roses. When she opened the door, she pulled me into a warm hug that smelled like vanilla and old books. "Come in, sweetheart." I made tea. We sat in her cozy living room, and Martha pulled out a large manila envelope from a drawer in her antique desk. "Loretta, what I'm about to tell you is going to be difficult to hear, but you deserve to know the truth." She opened the envelope and spread papers across the coffee table between us. Insurance documents, bank statements, legal papers. "When your mother passed away 10 years ago, she had a life insurance policy worth $500,000. She also had a savings account with $150,000 that she had carefully saved over the years. That money was meant for you." I stared at the documents, my brain struggling to process. "What? Nobody ever told me about this." "That's because you were supposed to receive it when you turned 25. Your mother specified that in her will. She wanted you to be mature enough to handle that kind of money. But Loretta," Martha's voice cracked, "you never got it, did you?" "No, I've never seen a penny of it." Martha's expression hardened with anger. "I suspected as much. After your father remarried, he cut off all contact with our side of the family. When I asked about the insurance money, about making sure you received it, Patrick told me you had gotten it and used it to pay off your student loans. I believed him. I'm so sorry." My hands shook as I picked up the documents. "Where did the money go?" Martha pulled out another sheet of paper. "A bank statement from 7 years ago. Your father had power of attorney over your accounts until you turned 25. He and Diane withdrew the entire amount shortly before your 25th birthday. They claimed they needed it for medical expenses and home repairs. But Loretta, I did some digging. There were no major medical expenses, no significant home repairs. $650,000. Gone. Stolen by my own father and his wife. They just took it?" My voice sounded hollow. "I found something else." Martha handed me a printout of old emails. "I managed to access your mother's old email account. The password was your birthday. I hope you don't mind, but I felt I needed to investigate." I took the papers, my vision blurring with tears. The emails were between my father and Diane, dated 8 years ago, shortly after they got married. Diane's email. "Patrick, we need to move Susan's money before Loretta turns 25. If we wait, we'll lose access to it. We can use it to pay off our debts, renovate the house, Live comfortably. She's only 18. She won't even know it existed. My father's response. I don't know, Diane. That money was meant for Loretta. Susan wanted her to have it. Diane's next email. Susan is gone. Loretta is a child who would just waste the money. We're her parents now. We can use it to provide her a better home, better opportunities. We'll be doing her a favor. Besides, if you don't agree, I'll have to reconsider our relationship. I can't be with someone who doesn't put his wife first. And then my father's final email. Okay, I'll talk to the bank about accessing the funds. But we have to be careful. Change the account information gradually so Loretta doesn't find out when she turns 25. I read the emails 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. Each time, the betrayal cut deeper. My father had stolen my inheritance. He had taken the money my mother saved for me, the money that was supposed to help me start my life, and he had given it to Diane. They had spent it on themselves, on their comfortable lifestyle, on Tyler's car, on Amber's trips, on Diane's shopping sprees. And then, after bleeding me dry of my mother's money, they had bled me dry of my own money for 3 more years. Martha, I whispered, what do I do? She reached across the table and took my hand. You fight back, honey. You get a lawyer. You sue them for fraud and theft. You make them pay for what they did to you and to your mother's memory. I drove back to Rachel's apartment in a daze. When I told her everything, she went pale. Loretta, this is serious. This is criminal. You need to report this. I know. I felt numb. Empty. I just can't believe my father did this. He loved my mom. How could he betray her like this? Diane got her claws in him, Rachel said bitterly. She manipulated him into thinking it was okay, that they deserved the money. That night, I could not sleep. I lay on the air mattress in Rachel's room, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past 10 years. Every time Diane had been cruel. Every time my father had chosen her over me. It all made sense now. They were protecting their secret. They were keeping me down, keeping me dependent, so I would never have the resources or confidence to investigate my mother's estate. But their plan had one fatal flaw. They pushed me too far. They kicked me out. And now I had nothing left to lose. The next morning, I contacted a lawyer named Gregory Harrison. He specialized in estate fraud and family law. I sent him all the documents Martha had given me, plus my own bank records showing the bills I had paid. 3 days later, I sat in his office, a small space filled with law books and framed degrees. Gregory was in his 50s, with graying hair and a kind face. He read through everything carefully, making notes. Finally, he looked up at me. Loretta, you have an extremely strong case. What your father and stepmother did is textbook fraud. They forged documents, stole your inheritance, and manipulated you into funding their lifestyle. We can sue for the full amount of the inheritance, plus interest, plus damages for emotional distress. How much are we talking about? I asked. The original $650,000, plus 8 years of compound interest at the legal rate, brings it to approximately $780,000. Add in damages, and we're looking at potentially close to $1 million. $1 million. Money I could have used for college without loans. Money I could have used to buy my own house. Money that was rightfully mine. Let's do it, I said. File the lawsuit. Gregory nodded. I'll prepare the paperwork. But Loretta, you need to be prepared. This will get ugly. They'll fight back. Diane sounds like someone who won't go down without a war. Let her fight, I said, feeling a cold determination settle over me. I'm done being the victim. The lawsuit was filed on February 3rd. My father and Diane were served with papers at their new apartment. Yes, apartment. They had been forced to move out of the house after missing 3 mortgage payments. The bank had begun foreclosure proceedings, and rather than fight it, they had packed up and moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town. I knew this because Tyler had posted angry rants about it on social media. Apparently, he and Amber now had to share the 2nd bedroom, and they were furious about the downgrade in their living situation. I felt no sympathy. The day after they were served, my phone exploded with messages. My father called 12 times in 1 hour. I did not answer. Diane sent text after text, ranging from pleading to threatening. Diane's texts. Loretta, please, let's talk about this like adults. You're going to destroy this family over money? Then, you're making a huge mistake. Drop this lawsuit or you'll regret it. Then, I'll make sure everyone knows what a vindictive, greedy person you are. I forwarded all the messages to Gregory. He said they could be used as evidence of harassment. But Diane was not content with just texting. 2 days after the lawsuit was filed, I discovered she had hired a private investigator to follow me. Rachel noticed a man in a dark sedan parked across from her apartment building 3 days in a row. When she confronted him, he drove off quickly, but not before she got a photo of his license plate. Gregory helped us file a police report, but without direct evidence of stalking or threats, there was little the police could do. Then Diane escalated further. She somehow got access to my email account. I do not know how. Maybe she guessed my password. Maybe she hired someone to hack it. But she got in, and she downloaded years of emails between Rachel and me. 1 week later, Diane posted screenshots of those emails on Facebook. She had carefully selected messages where I complained about my family. Venting sessions where I called Diane manipulative or said I wished my father would see through her lies. Normal, private conversations between friends. But Diane cut and edited them to make me look hateful and vindictive. The post went viral in our local community. I'm talking hundreds of shares, thousands of comments. People I had never met were calling me evil, spoiled, ungrateful. One woman commented, "This girl is destroying her family because she's jealous of her stepmother. Disgusting." Another, "I hope she never has children. She would be a terrible mother." The attacks were relentless. I had to take time off work because I was having panic attacks. My boss, thankfully, was understanding. He told me to take a week, work from home if I could, and focus on my mental health. Rachel held me while I cried. "They're winning," I sobbed. "Diane is destroying my reputation. Nobody will ever believe me now." "The court will believe you," Rachel said firmly. "That's all that matters. Loretta, social media isn't real. Those people don't know you. They don't know the truth." But it felt real. It felt like the whole world hated me. Then, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, something terrifying happened. Rachel and I came home from grocery shopping to find her apartment window shattered. A brick had been thrown through it, and attached to the brick was a note written in red marker. "Back off, Loretta." We called the police immediately. They took a report, dusted for fingerprints, but said without witnesses or security camera footage, there was little they could do. The complex did not have cameras covering that side of the building. I knew it was Diane, or someone she had hired, but I could not prove it. That night, I seriously considered dropping the lawsuit. I was exhausted, terrified. The stress was affecting my health. I had lost 10 pounds in 3 weeks. I was not sleeping. I jumped at every sound. But then I thought about my mother, about the money she had saved for me, working long hours as a nurse to give me a better future, about how Diane had stolen that money without a second thought, about how they had used me for 3 years after already taking everything. No, I would not give up. I would not let them win. The next day, Martha called me. "Loretta, I've been going through more of your mother's things. I found something. A USB drive hidden in a book on her bookshelf. I think you need to see what's on it." I drove to Martha's house that evening. She handed me a small red USB drive. "I already looked," Martha said quietly. "It's exactly what we need." I plugged the USB into Martha's computer. Inside was a folder labeled Legal Documents. I opened it and felt my heart race. Emails. Dozens of emails between Patrick and Diane from 8 years ago. The originals, not edited or cut. In them, Diane explicitly laid out her plan to take my inheritance. One email from Diane. "We need to move that money before Loretta turns 25. Change the account. I'll handle forging her signature on the transfer documents. You just need to authorize it as her guardian." Patrick's response, "Are you sure this is legal? What if she finds out?" Diane, "She won't. And even if she does, we'll say it was for family expenses. Who's going to believe a spoiled kid over her father? We're doing this, Patrick. The money will secure our future." Another email from 6 months later, after they had taken the money. "Did you close all the old accounts?" Patrick, "Yes. Loretta will never know the money existed. You were right. This was the smart move." I stared at the screen, tears streaming down my face. This was it. Undeniable proof that they had conspired to steal my inheritance, proof of premeditation, proof that my father knew exactly what he was doing. How did Mom have these? I asked Martha. Your mother was always careful with finances. She must have had access to Patrick's email account. Maybe she suspected something was going to happen after she passed. Maybe she wanted to leave you protection. I copied the files onto my own laptop and immediately sent them to Gregory. His response came within an hour. This changes everything. This is criminal fraud. I'm going to push for criminal charges in addition to the civil lawsuit. Loretta, we're going to win this. The trial began on April 9th. It had been moved quickly through the system because of the strength of the evidence and the fact that criminal charges had been filed. The courtroom was small, wood-paneled, with harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look washed out. I sat next to Gregory at the plaintiff's table. Across the aisle, Patrick and Diane sat with their lawyer, a nervous-looking young man named Bradley Thompson, who had probably been assigned to them because they could not afford anyone better. Tyler and Amber sat in the gallery behind their mother. Neither of them looked at me. Martha sat behind me, her hand occasionally reaching forward to squeeze my shoulder for support. Rachel sat beside her. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Coleman, reviewed the case files. This court is convened to hear the case of Loretta Mitchell versus Patrick Mitchell and Diane Watson Mitchell regarding allegations of fraud, theft, and emotional distress, Judge Coleman announced. The first day was mostly procedural. Both lawyers presented their opening statements. Gregory laid out the evidence clearly: the life insurance policy, the savings account, the emails proving premeditated fraud, the bank records showing my father and Diane had transferred all the money into their personal accounts, the 3 years of bills I had paid while they enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle. Bradley, the defense attorney, tried to argue that the money had been used for family expenses, that Patrick had a right to manage his daughter's finances until she was of age, and that I was being vindictive for being asked to leave the family home. It was a weak argument, and everyone in the courtroom knew it. On the second day, I was called to testify. I walked to the witness stand, my legs shaking. I placed my hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth. Gregory questioned me gently, walking me through my relationship with my father before and after he remarried. I talked about my mother, about how close she and I had been. I talked about the bills I had paid, providing detailed records. I talked about Christmas dinner, about being called a burden, about being kicked out. Then Bradley cross-examined me. He tried to make me look spoiled, entitled, vindictive. He asked why I had not simply talked to my father about the bills, instead of cutting them off. He suggested I was exaggerating the emotional impact for money. I stayed calm. I answered every question honestly. And when he asked, "Isn't it true that you cut off your family's utilities as revenge?" I looked him straight in the eye and said, "No. I stopped paying for a household I no longer lived in. That's not revenge, that's reality." On the third day, Diane was called to testify. She took the stand looking immaculate in a navy suit, her blonde hair perfectly styled. She painted herself as a victim. A loving stepmother who had tried her best to connect with a difficult stepdaughter. A wife who supported her husband through grief. But when Gregory cross-examined her, everything fell apart. He presented the emails, the ones from the USB drive. He read them aloud in court. "Mrs. Watson Mitchell, in this email dated July 15th, 8 years ago, you wrote, and I quote, 'I'll handle forging her signature on the transfer documents. Can you explain that?'" Diane's face went pale. That's out of context." "Out of context?" Gregory repeated. "You admit you wrote this email?" "Yes, but I meant I was going to have Loretta sign them herself. I just worded it poorly." "But Loretta never signed any documents transferring her inheritance to you, did she?" Diane's silence was damning. Gregory continued, "And in this email from October of that same year, you wrote to Patrick, 'She'll never know the money existed.' Why would you say that if you had legitimate reasons for using the money?" Diane had no answer. Then something happened that nobody expected. During a recess after Diane's testimony, I was standing in the courthouse hallway when my father approached me. He looked terrible. He had aged 10 years in the past few months. "Loretta, can we talk, please?" I looked at Gregory, who nodded slightly. "I'll be right here," he said, staying close. My father and I walked to a quieter corner of the hallway. He was crying, actually crying. "Loretta, I'm so sorry." I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know Diane was manipulating everything the way she was. Dad, I saw the emails. You knew. You approved the transfer. I know. But Diane told me it was legal. She said we were allowed to use the money for family expenses. She said your mother would want us to use it to give you a better home. I was so lost after Susan died. I wasn't thinking straight. And Diane, she made it all sound so reasonable. You let her lie to me for 8 years, I said, my voice breaking. You let her steal from me. You kicked me out on Christmas and called me a burden. That was all Diane, Patrick's voice rose. She told me you were being difficult, that you were refusing to contribute to the household. She made it sound like you were the problem. Loretta, I swear I didn't know you were paying all those bills. Diane handled all the finances. She told me she was covering everything with her work income and some savings. I never looked closely at the accounts. I trusted her. I wanted to believe him. Part of me desperately wanted to believe that my father had been manipulated as much as I had. Then why didn't you defend me at Christmas dinner, I asked. Why didn't you tell Diane she was wrong? Why did you let her call me a burden and kick me out? Patrick covered his face with his hands. Because I'm a coward. Because I've been under Diane's thumb for so long that I forgot how to stand up for what's right. Loretta, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. I'm leaving Diane. I filed for divorce. I want to try to fix this. To fix us. I stared at my father, this broken man in front of me. I can't forgive you right now, Dad. Maybe someday, but not now. You broke my trust in the worst possible way. Patrick nodded, tears streaming down his face. I understand. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. We returned to the courtroom. When the trial resumed, something shocking happened. Patrick stood up suddenly. Your Honor, I'd like to speak. Judge Coleman raised an eyebrow. Mr. Mitchell, you'll have your opportunity to testify. No, I need to say this now. Patrick's voice was shaking. Everything Loretta said is true. Everything. Diane and I stole her inheritance. We conspired to hide it from her. I let Diane manipulate me and my daughter. I'm guilty. I admit it. I don't want to fight this anymore. Diane jumped to her feet. Patrick, what are you doing? You're betraying me. No, Patrick said quietly. I'm finally telling the truth. Diane's face twisted with rage. She turned to Patrick, then to me, her composure completely shattering. You ruined my life, she screamed at me. I did everything for this family. Everything. And you're so selfish, so vindictive that you couldn't just let it go. She lunged toward me. I froze, but the bailiff was faster. He grabbed Diane, pulling her back before she could reach me. You're nothing, Diane shrieked as the bailiff restrained her. You'll always be nothing. Your own father couldn't even love you enough to keep you. Judge Coleman slammed her gavel. Mrs. Watson Mitchell, you are in contempt of court. Bailiff, remove her from this courtroom. Diane was dragged out, still screaming. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Coleman called for order. Then she looked at the evidence, at Patrick's confession, at the chaos that had just unfolded. I've seen enough, she said. I'm ready to render a verdict. The courtroom went silent. Patrick Mitchell and Diane Watson Mitchell, you are guilty of fraud and theft. You deliberately stole $650,000 from Loretta Mitchell. You manipulated and abused her trust for years. Your actions are reprehensible. Judge Coleman looked at me. Miss Mitchell, I am awarding you the full amount of your inheritance, $650,000, plus 8 years of compound interest, bringing the total to approximately $790,000. Additionally, I am awarding you $100,000 in damages for emotional distress. The defendants will pay all court costs and attorney fees. Furthermore, Mrs. Watson Mitchell is sentenced to 6 months in county jail for contempt of court and for assault charges stemming from today's outburst. Mr. Mitchell will receive probation and is ordered to attend counseling. I sat in stunned silence. $890,000, plus attorney fees. It was more than I had ever imagined. Court is adjourned. The weeks following the trial passed in a blur. The full judgment came out to approximately $900,000 after all calculations. Patrick and Diane's bank accounts were frozen, and assets were liquidated to pay me. They had to sell nearly everything. Diane's designer clothes and handbags, Tyler's car, the few pieces of valuable furniture they owned. I did not feel joy watching them lose everything. Mostly, I felt tired, relieved, and finally free. The money hit my account in mid-May, $900,000. I sat at Rachel's kitchen table, staring at my phone screen showing the balance, unable to quite believe it was real. Rachel hugged me tight. "You did it, Loretta. You won." The first thing I did was pay off my student loans. $38,000 gone in one transaction. Then I paid Rachel back for 4 months of living with her, even though she protested, insisting she would never charge me anything. I put half the money into conservative investments, index funds, bonds, things that would grow slowly but steadily. I wanted to make sure I would never be financially vulnerable again. With another portion of the money, I put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom condo near downtown. It was not fancy, but it was mine. My own space, my own home. I spent weeks decorating it, choosing furniture and curtains and dishes. Every choice was mine alone, and that felt powerful. I donated $50,000 to the National Domestic Violence Hotline and related organizations that help people escape abusive family situations. Because that is what I had been in, not physical abuse, but financial and emotional abuse. I wanted to help others who were trapped the way I had been. I quit my second job at the restaurant. I could finally live on just my accountant's salary without drowning. I actually had money left over after paying bills. I could go out to dinner if I wanted, buy new clothes, save for vacation. In June, I took my first real vacation in 5 years. I went to the coast for a week, stayed in a nice hotel, walked on the beach, and just breathed. I did not check my email. I did not worry about bills. I just existed, peacefully, for the first time in what felt like forever. Tyler and Amber never apologized. In fact, Tyler sent me one final nasty message calling me a greedy witch before I blocked him completely. Amber posted cryptic, bitter quotes on social media about family betrayal. I never responded. They were toxic people who would never take responsibility for their actions. I had no room for them in my new life. Diane served her 6 months in county jail. When she got out, she and Patrick's divorce was finalized. She moved 2 states away. I heard through Martha that she tried to start her life over somewhere. Nobody knew her story. I hoped she learned something from the experience, but I doubted it. People like Diane rarely change. My father was a more complicated situation. He reached out to me multiple times after the trial. He sent letters, emails, left voicemails. He told me he was going to therapy, that he was trying to understand how he let things get so bad, that he had failed me as a father. I did not respond for 2 months. I needed time, space, to heal without him. But in July, I agreed to meet him for coffee. We sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, and it was awkward, painful, but necessary. "Loretta, I know I can't undo what I did," he said. "I stole from you. I let Diane control me and poison my relationship with you. I called you a burden when you were actually holding everything together. There's no excuse for any of it." "No, there isn't," I agreed quietly. "I want to try to rebuild our relationship," he continued. "If you'll let me, I don't expect forgiveness right away. Maybe not ever. But I want to try to be the father I should have been all along." I looked at this man, my father, who had caused me so much pain. But I also saw the father who had taught me to ride a bike, who had stayed up with me all night when I had the flu as a child, who had held me at my mother's funeral and promised we would get through it together. People are complicated. They can love you and hurt you at the same time. They can fail you and still want to do better. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "But there are conditions. You have to keep going to therapy. You have to be completely honest with me from now on. No more secrets. No more choosing someone else over me. And it's going to take time, a lot of time." "I'll do whatever it takes," Patrick said, and I believed he meant it. We started meeting once a month for coffee. Just coffee, nothing more. Slowly, very slowly, we began to rebuild something. It would never be what it was before. That trust was shattered beyond full repair. But maybe we could build something new, something honest. I also reconnected with Martha and other members of my mother's family. We had dinners together. They shared stories about my mom that I had never heard. I felt closer to her memory than I had in years. Rachel and I remained best friends. She was there through everything, never judging, always supporting. I will be grateful to her for the rest of my life. As for me, I focused on healing. I went to therapy to work through the trauma of those years. I learned about boundaries, about self-worth, about recognizing manipulation. I learned that saying no does not make you selfish, that protecting yourself is not cruel, that you cannot set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. I also learned to forgive myself for being naive, for trusting too much, for not seeing the signs earlier. None of what happened was my fault. I was a victim of calculated abuse, and it took me a long time to truly believe that. Now, as I sit in my own condo, in my own space, living my own life, I feel something I have not felt in years: peace. I am not rich, but I am comfortable. I am not surrounded by family, but I am surrounded by people who truly care about me. I am not where I thought I would be at this point in my life, but I am exactly where I need to be. My mother's money, the money she saved for me, gave me more than financial security. It gave me freedom, it gave me justice, and in a strange way, it gave me myself back. I think about that Christmas dinner sometimes, about the moment my father called me a burden. It was the worst night of my life, but it was also the catalyst for everything that came after. If he had not kicked me out, I might have stayed trapped in that toxic situation for years, maybe forever. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best changes. So to anyone out there dealing with a toxic family, with people who use you and manipulate you and make you feel worthless, I want to tell you this. You deserve better. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be free. And leaving, standing up for yourself, protecting your own well-being, that is not selfish. That is survival. That is strength. It took me losing everything to realize I had never really had it in the first place. And only by letting go could I finally build something real. I still have hard days. Days when I miss the father I thought I had. Days when I wonder if I did the right thing. But then I look around at my life now, at my independence, at my peace, and I know I did exactly what I needed to do. This is my story. This is how I took back my life. And if you're in a similar situation, know that you can too. You are not a burden. You are not worthless. You are strong, valuable, and deserving of respect. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been in a situation where family took advantage of you financially or emotionally? How did you handle it? What advice would you give to someone going through something similar? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is struggling right now. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps others find this content who might need to hear it. And subscribe to follow more real-life stories about overcoming difficult situations and finding strength you didn't know you had. Share this with someone who might need encouragement to stand up for themselves. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. I wish you healing, peace, and the courage to choose yourself when you need to. Take care of yourselves. You deserve it.